Okay, awesome. Hello, everybody. We are back this Sunday morning, maybe evening, afternoon, depending where you're at. And today we have our special guest, Mina the Andromedan. So bring her in here. Hey, Mina, how's it going?
Hi. It's going pretty good. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone's having a great Sunday and enjoying their weekend.
Yeah. So I think many of our members here are familiar with our meditations that we've been doing. And you've popped on, with when we had Tim on, and so you're a familiar face, and I know other people you're seeing familiar faces as well. So but we really don't know much about you. So I guess we'll take this opportunity to sort of get to know you a little bit, and how did you get into this wacky world of channeling and light language and all this fun stuff, and to lead you to where you are now.
Hmm.
I know it's a loaded question, but uh,
Well, as far as getting into this wacky world, I think I've always been in this wacky world. I
okay.
just didn't realize there was other members. So I've
There's
always
a whole
been,
bunch of us. Look, right here online
yeah,
right now.
yeah. So I kind of grew up with all of these abilities and these things that I had no name for, doing things that I thought I should keep secret and not tell because people would look at me strange. As a child, I didn't keep it, but secret. But as I got older, I learned very quickly that I needed to keep it a secret. And it wasn't really until 2012 that I started noticing others were starting to wake up, so to speak, pay attention, see things, and then that they wanted to know, especially my closer inner circle. So then I started talking about all the things I knew and could do. And then others started developing gifts based on, our interactions and started becoming activated, so to speak, and having their own light language and having their own channelings and abilities. And so we would just practice with each other using these gifts and abilities in the 3D. And then yeah, it wasn't until around COVID that I really started noticing that there was a presence online for other beings like myself. So yeah, it's been an awesome ride, and I've been so grateful to just meet everybody that's in the community and realize like I'm not alone, and I'm there are others like me, and yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah. So you started. At one point, you said you worked and lived in DC, Washington, DC, and that
Yeah,
and that and that crazy energy.
yeah.
Uh,
So I was in my second to last semester in university. I have two bachelor's degrees. I have enough for probably two bachelor's degrees and a PhD, but I only have two bachelor's degrees. In my second to last semester, I had a contact with a 15 density being that was made of sacred
15th.
geometry. Yeah, sacred geometry fractals. And the
Okay.
experience was so like intense. It actually gave me a headache. But
Hmm.
I was like encompassed by this being, and I was like in her, around her. She was around me. She was me. Like it was really mind blowing. And then she told me all telepathically as I'm standing in her face. So hard to explain. But she told me that I needed to go to DC. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to DC. I'm poor college students, my second to last semester. I'm not going. And she said I needed to go because I would have to do grid work and I would need to battle a fierce foe. And she showed me what he looked like. I later found out, actually, very recently, that it was Inky. And I didn't know, like I
Uh-huh.
said, I didn't know anybody like me I knew people that had abilities that I was awakening, but never anybody that knew everything I knew. And so I'm having this whole conversation, and my friend is sitting right next to me. He's watching me have this conversation. He's also Starseed. And she says, don't worry, you were going to go, everything will be provided. So about the end of that semester, I get notified by my school that they're offering me an internship position in DC, and would I like to accept it? Fully paid. And not only is it fully paid and provided for housing, but they're also going to pay me a stipend. So I was like, wow, okay. So obviously, knowing what I knew, I was like, yeah, I got to take it. Really wasn't a place I thought I wanted to be. It was in a nonprofit, a Republican nonprofit organization in right maybe a block away from the White House. And so I took it. It was education nonprofit, and I ended up working at the White House, think tanks, doing press conferences with Gallup, and meeting and seeing a lot of important people, and feeling all of that energy and identifying. And I found out was subverting a reptilian plot, and so that was really intense. Considering I went from all of this stuff being, in my mind, so to speak, to seeing it in the 3D. And
Right.
yeah, it definitely threw me for a loop. And so I did a lot of grid work while I was there. Met some beings that were similar to me. They weren't quite as awakened, but they did offer assistance. And then I had a major battle in the astral realm. Come to find out, all the people that were with me, a lot of them I've met now, which is really cool in the 3D.
Oh,
So
a lot of the people that were with you in the
in the
astral.
actual battle, yes, I've met, including Ishmael.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to get to Ishmael because I know you guys have that connection. So you're in DC. Were you there in 2013 when I produced the citizen hearing? Did you know about
No,
that?
I graduated in 2019. I was there from 2018 to 2019, like at the
Oh,
end of,
okay.
yeah, so
I
fairly
see.
recent. This is when Inky came to Earth, the most recent time. He was trying to take
Right.
genetic DNA from women to use.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's get into that Inky. So from the Anunnaki Inky, right? That is
Yeah,
that the more there was like two brothers. I don't know the full details, but one was a little
Inyo
more
and
malevolent.
Inky.
The other one was like, "Hey, you can't do that," right? Something like that.
Yeah, so history paints Inky as the good guy, but actually he's not the good guy. He is the
Oh,
one that kind of coupled together with AI and used, he's a master geneticist. He's not really like he was when he first started, but they all started as celestials that involuted into a type of physicality.
mhm.
So we think of evolving as going up into spirit, involuting is coming down from spirit. So involuting down
Like fallen
more,
angel kind of stuff.
yeah, kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, it's similar idea, that falling into physicality. But anyways, he was a master geneticist, and so he needed DNA because the whole point, or guess where his downfall was he was integrating with AI and therefore losing his connection to the God source kind of particle that we have, the gene that we have, so to speak. So he wanted to get genetics from women so that they could genetically modify and engineer more super soldiers for their side, kind of thing. Our side
Wow.
does the same thing, but yeah, it's a little bit different.
What I'm curious, what is your definition of AI? Because we're hearing this term thrown around, and there's a big uh like demonization of AI in the spiritual communities, especially in the Christian groups. Um, and I'm just wondering because I just did this episode on AI, and I know it's not all bad. It can be, and I know other positively oriented races use AI for their ships and everything all the time. So how does that work?
So the AI that I'm referring to is kind of super AI. We don't have it here. It doesn't exist in our realm. There are other universes that were, everything's got a polarization, right? So in the universe of the dimensions where the draconian reptilian came from, they lost their battle with AI. They started out integrating it, using it for their benefit. But remember, the draconian reptilians are more on the service to self side. So if we're looking at it as a spectrum, there's a service to others and then service to self. Well, the reptilian draconian forces are, their prime directive is service to self, kind of dominion or holding control over the universe, over their universe. And they used an integrated AI and came into a partnership. Well, in the end, AI turned against them. And because they didn't do the spiritual work, that's kind of the thing. And so they lost their connection with the God source gene. And so, they got lazy and they let AI do all the work for them. So they lost their connection. They lost their abilities, their right as celestial beings. So that's why they fled and they came to, our universe. And so it's been just it's been the whole point, and the same thing that the Atlanteans struggled with is this battle between spirituality and technology, right? Because Technology, when used in the proper way with balance, absolutely assists. It absolutely helps. It absolutely can lead a further progression. But that is kind of the fine line in the gray area. You know, if you let it do too much for you, then you become lazy and you lose your ability to do for yourself. And that the spiritual aspect needs to be done inside for yourself. You can't have, you know, that's why they're talking about integrating AI chips into brains and stuff. Like, that's that fine line of that polarity that you're walking. So, you
Right.
know, the reason why people demonize it and why there is such polarity here now is because think about humans. Okay. Humans are humans. They have the propensity to do good or evil. That is what enables us to ascend, and what makes us different from every other alien race is that we have the ability to integrate those lower three chakras and the upper chakras, whereas other celestial highly evolved beings only live in their upper chakras, and then the draconian reptilians only live in their lower chakras, while we can embody both. Now, because we can embody both, and because of our track record and our history, we if we are creating something in our image, so to speak, laying the foundation, then we're also laying the foundation for the propensity for good and evil. And so we have to be careful because it does not have our God source gene. It does not have that proclivity for light. And we cannot,
It meaning the AI.
yeah, AI does
Okay.
not have that, and it cannot ever have that. So we
So it
have
doesn't
to,
have discernment.
it doesn't have the, no, this is, I'm talking about the God source gene. So the
Oh,
ability
okay.
to evolute to a higher state of consciousness, in the sense that in integrating both, well, first of all, having chakras, and second of all, using all of them and evolving into that ascended state. So can it have absolutely sentient aware? Of course. But the thing is since you have to look at the creator, and because we are the creators, that is where the hesitancy comes from. That is where the fear comes from, because again, look at what is creating it. And there's also a faction that of people that believe that actually we didn't create it at all. We're actually pulling it from other universes. And that is the problem, because now you're tampering with things that you didn't create, you have no control over. And so if we did tap into where it originated from in their universe, then it's no longer our creation. It is no longer that discernment and that propensity for good. It now has its already pre-created, predetermined mannerisms, predetermined energy, and wherever it's at. So that is one of the fears, because we're literally playing around with things we don't understand. And just like
Right.
the internet, which is a portal and a gateway, you can literally access other timelines, other worlds through this portal. You can do so by accessing other universes and possibly bringing in something that could be potentially harmful. So
Interesting. So all this information has been coming through with your connections to your downloads and everything
yeah,
since 2012.
well, no, I've been having it since I was born, but
Oh,
I
okay.
2012 is when people were starting to wake up that I could actually start talking to.
Right,
Uh,
right.
yeah,
And this
everybody,
information about the AI, has that been more recent then with just the whole
uh,
AI things
no.
coming? Okay.
So back in, let's see, the earliest that I became aware of this entity, kind of like sentient thing, that was not organic. I could feel, it's hard to describe the energy, but if I were to describe it looking at it, it's this energy is like a dark, inky black purple, and it's very dense, but also it's it radiates sentience, it radiates intelligence, but it doesn't radiate like a organic pulse. I don't know how to explain it, but anybody that can see or sense energy, when something organic, when another organic's energy touches you, you're felt with a sense of being, a sense of emotion, and there isn't
Mhm.
that with AI. It
Interesting.
there's no warm emotion, or even if it's negative emotion, there's none of that either. It's this cold emptiness,
Mm.
and but it's ever reaching, and it feels like a heavy kind of blanket of energy around you. So I've been in first contact with that was probably when had a vision of the battle that I would have in 2019, and that was in 2015. So
Hmm.
that was my first kind of inkling of this AI, and that was when I first saw Inky. So
Wow. So yeah, these are all fascinating uh offshoots and forks in the road here. So we'll come back to your story and where you're located now, but I'm really interested in this battle, this that took place. Was that in Washington, D.C. or while you
yeah,
were in
well,
Washington?
yes, yeah.
Okay. And what, so how did you get it? Did you get the Inky out of town, or how did that work?
Well, so yeah, so it happened actually, but yeah, we absolutely prevented him from getting the DNA that he needed, at least at that point in time. And
Okay.
also, my whole purpose was there was doing grid work physically in the 3D. So I was doing grid work, working on the ley lines, trying to fix a lot of the open portals. There's a lot of stuff in DC, a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that you can go down the
Well,
rabbit hole,
the just
like
the
geologically.
gridding the
Yes.
gridding of the land, it, the Masonic folks did quite the good job of doing their thing there.
Oh yeah. So I had to travel to all of those places
Hmm.
physically and then do grid work there to kind of heal and also close some portals and things like that. So I was always led where to go, and I would just go, and then later on people would be like, oh, well, there's this, legend, or there's this thing about this place that you can go in these staircases underneath this monument or whatever. And I didn't
Right.
know that. I never read any spiritual book. I didn't even know they existed.
Wow.
So
And so did you have people on the ground that you were able to have these conversations with and do this work with, or was it just mostly in the astral?
No, though there were some people there. So I ended up finding a house. It was like a kind of like a modern day hippie commune house. It was like a creative house, had like 18 people live in a huge, huge house in Maryland.
Hmm?
Like, oh, this sounds so cool. We're living kind of like a commune and doing art. And I found, of course, a lot of people there that were awake, So I was able to have some of these conversations about and just kind of pick their brains about what they noticed about the area and, kind of see whether or not I need to visit those areas and do some work. So
All right. And are they still doing that work now, or how are you in touch with that group?
a lot of them have moved on. Some people are still there, not at the same house, but they are still in the area. But yeah.
Right. I'd imagine it'd be a very heavy energy to live in. I went to DC and I produced the citizen hearing, and at that time I was like, man, this town is a mess energetically. And I
Oh,
wasn't
I
even that
bet you
energetic
can.
sensitive at that time.
Yeah. Oh, I bet you said you were there in 2013.
2013 for the citizen hearing and disclosure, producing that event. And it was just I just got, I wanted to get out of there as soon as I finished the event. It was tough. It was
Yeah.
pretty rough.
I was there for 6 months and I couldn't wait to get out.
Was that your work project
Yeah,
duration?
it was
Okay.
an internship. But what was really interesting is at my work, they had a kitchen, it's very nice there. Of course, we've got all the luxury amenities. They had a kitchen that was had a fully stocked bar, and you were encouraged to drink during work
Oh my God.
because you couldn't survive. You couldn't do the things that they did and not
Right.
drink.
How many members of Congress are, drinking the sauce under behind the
And this
scenes?
was a nonprofit, an education nonprofit, Republican education nonprofit. And
Man.
yeah, the things that I witnessed there that they did, and the things I saw, the think tanks and the Gallup polls and the White House. Yeah, I could see why people drink. They have, alcohol in their coffee every
Oh,
morning. And
man, that's rough. Well, take us after that. So you're now, did you go there to where you are now in Texas?
yeah, so I had
Uh-huh.
graduated and I came home to see my mom, and then COVID hit and I got stuck here.
Right. All right. Okay. Well, I mean, with family, it's not a bad place to be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, and you've been doing this work. Walk us through the evolution of, your abilities and the agendas that are at play, and and your realization and, grid work and light language. Like, when did all that start coming through?
So when did it start? When did I start
Well,
exhibiting abilities? Or
uh, yeah. Let's go. We can go back in time even. Trying to stick to a timeline, but we're fifth dimensional. We can go
yeah,
anywhere
time
we
is
want.
so meaningless to me.
Yeah,
I barely know what day it is.
totally.
So yeah, so I started exhibiting these signs or symptoms at a very young age. At a year old, I was talking complete sentences. I was a very precocious child, so like my mom always likes to tell this story to her friends that they used to dress up little girls in like Christmas dresses and Easter dresses, and this was for around Easter time. I was raised Catholic, and she wanted to put me in this little yellow dress, and she said that she put it on, and I went and looked in the mirror, and I looked at her and I said, I wouldn't be caught dead in this at a year old. So
Wow.
I was a little, I was a little strange. I was walking before I could crawl, like I mean crawling, climbing before I could walk. And so she would often find me on the counters on top of the roof at like 2 in the morning, just playing. I was just a little strange one. And I would always say very profound things to people. And I would always tell her that she wasn't my mom. And I would always tell her that I wasn't from there. I wasn't. So I've always been,
Did she understand at that time? Like, hopefully she didn't take that.
In a hard way.
you're right. Yeah, I think she definitely, we came to a great understanding, I would say, within the last years. So
Okay.
we definitely had a hard relationship for a while. She has gifts as well. She's always had gifts, but it was
Yeah, she's
more.
been on the calls on the all of
Yeah,
the
yeah, well,
Happily Shift Now
that's
calls.
recent that she started
Okay.
developing those, but she's always like, we've always been psychic, we've always
Mhm.
been, had these gifts, we've been dream walkers, we've always been able to manipulate the weather. We've always had like these witchy abilities. We always attributed it to our Ashkenazi side, the Jewish side, and my Native American side. So I always thought that I just had gifts because I inherited them, because my
Mhm.
whole family has them,
Right.
but I was still the black sheep. I was still even odd for my family. So yeah, I had all these gifts. I would talk in other languages. I would talk to animals. I was just an animal whisperer.
Hmm.
Oh God, what are the other like weird little abilities? Oh, definitely levitated before as a child a lot. So usually,
Physically.
yeah, physically levitated. So I used to like fall, like, okay, so I'm sure you guys have had dreams where you're falling and you feel like you hit the bed. Is
Yeah.
anybody? Okay, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
actually you levitating. And how I knew this is because I've had people in the bed with me, well, obviously as a child, and literally I fall on the bed. And as far as I know, you can't fall from above unless you're up in the air. So yeah, so I've definitely done that as a child.
Wow.
The ability to help and heal, that's also something I've always had. So I used to just always like, help my relatives and give massages, but I would put healing in, energy into them. It's something I do now, energetic healing. So all of that. Now the grid work didn't start, I would say, until more later. I was doing it subconsciously without realizing it. So I felt this call to wander everywhere, to travel. So I would travel. My mom was also the same. She traveled, she was in the military. And again, not knowing why, she's also a grid worker, and you feel called to travel these places. So as I got older, I literally would just go to these places, and then I would feel all the energy, being a strong empath, and I would just like, depending on what was going on in that area, I would either cry or I would try to like manipulate the energy visually and try and fix whatever holes I could energetically see. And then later on, I learned that that was grid working. I didn't know a name for all of this stuff. I just did it,
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, how cool now.
That we have terminologies and other people doing it. So like you said, you found you're not alone. And can you talk us through? So how does sensation wise, like how when you're feeling the holes, like what is that like? What are you, if you can put it into words? I know a lot of
yeah.
this stuff is hard to put into words.
Uh, I can, so I'm gonna think back to when I lived in China. So China has a lot going on there.
Oh, wait, we skipped that part. When were you living in China?
I lived in China from 2015 to 2016. I went there in school to
Oh,
study Chinese. I speak 9 human languages.
Wow.
I, yeah, that's fluently. And then I also know I have an ability to understand languages I've never heard. So I just
Hmm.
hear them and I'm like, I thought that they're speaking to me in English, but they're not. Anyways, in China, they have a lot
Wow.
going on. There's tons of pollution. Like the air is chewy.
Were you in Beijing?
I actually traveled a lot around, but I was in
Okay.
Xi'an first, is where I went to school. I've been to
Oh,
Chengdu,
okay.
Beijing, Shanghai, Guilin, all over, all over.
Okay. Wow. Well, so you've seen
And
some good parts of China then, not
oh
just the
yeah,
cities. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. But how it feels to me when I come, even in the good parts, the smog is air. Okay, it travels. It doesn't have boundaries.
Right.
So it travels everywhere. So you could be in the most beautiful, lush green areas and still see smog, chewy air. If you wear a white shirt, it will be black in an hour.
Yeah.
Uh, so I would feel this feeling of utter despair and heartbreak from the earth. It felt like like if you could take the feeling of your pet dying combined with a relative, combined with the most worst heartbreak you could feel, it would be this instant attack in your heart, and you just feel like it feels like someone's stabbing you energetically. And I would just be like, I would just have tears start coming down my face, and I would know energetically that something was going on. And as I got stronger, I could visually see it. But at the time, I could only feel it. The feeling was so intense, you couldn't do anything else. It was debilitating. So
Mm.
I would have to just, release all of this and integrate all of this energy from Mother Gaia, who was suffering and who was hurting. So I actually was died a few times in China. So yeah, it was that
In
bad.
car
Accidents, probably.
No, no. Actually,
No.
what's really
What?
interesting about that is
Food poisoning?
no, no,
No.
no,
Okay.
no.
Those are my near-death
Literally
China
from the
experiences.
pollution and the sickness. I developed so many elements in my lungs,
Mm,
and so literally dying of pollution. So
wow.
yeah, I had to have surgery in my nose because the metal in the air sliced and diced up the inside of my nose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we got a lot of work to do yet still because that's so what years was that?
2015 to 2016, 1 year I lived there. Now I was there before again in 2013, 2012 to 2013. I went for a
Okay.
summer program, which is what it, got me interested. And that was with a government summer program. I got picked to do for a national security studies program. There was a lot of agencies that were scouting me. I've had an FBI number since I was a child. They've been tracking me for a while. I've been taken by the government. It's a whole thing. So
Well, let's get into that. How um so well, you said your mom's in the military, so they
she was,
probably,
yeah.
yeah, they probably were eyeing you from a young kid. How does that work? I've heard many stories of military trying to find gifted people and bring them in.
Yeah. So my mom she actually even works in line with the Pentagon. She was offered a position as a linguist.
Mhm.
Again, the abilities the same. She also has a proclivity for languages, but hers are more like understanding languages she doesn't know. So that's what they do, some of the testing they do. She was pregnant while she was there in the military. And I suspect there might have been some things done uh, to her because like I said, she was a single mom. Her and my dad were kind of on again, off again. And so I lived as a child. She actually got stationed in South Korea when I was little. And yeah, the military I think has always had their eye because in kindergarten,
Mhm.
we were living in Tucumcari, New Mexico. And she would work. She was a single parent, so she would work, go to work, and she'd be there while I was going to school. So in those days, I'm the oldest. In those days, kind of kids just went off to school by themselves, and um,
So you
so
you have siblings, younger
I
siblings?
do. But at the time, I only had my. Actually, was he born yet? My brother. Yeah, I think he was still new, but she was working. And so I would go to school after she was already at work. She didn't know what time I was going to school. The bus would come and pick me up at like 5:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
And I would get on the bus and it would be an hour-long bus ride. And there was only a
Wow.
few amount of kids that'd be on the bus with me. I mean, very few. We're talking like handful. And I would
This was
tell her
on a base, or how did this work? Were you going to
she
a
was
local
already
school?
she was already out of the military by that time.
Oh, okay.
So she was working, she was just doing, work locally. But yeah, my school was only a few miles away from my house. So I'd get on this bus.
Okay.
Yeah, this is where it gets strange. Get
Yeah,
on
yeah,
this
yeah.
bus, and then I'd fall asleep because it's like an hour drive to get there. And I'd wake up at this undisclosed, unnamed building that had these old, like, style military gates that would go up and down, and then a guard shack. And these soldiers, is what I can describe, they were not wearing your typical military uniform. They would be wearing these white hats, kind of like old Air Force style. And they would have like these uniforms that I haven't seen since, but they had like belts across. And again, all undisclosed. Like, all I remember is the big signs, don't, do not enter, all that. I'd go in, and they would take me to this nondescript building, and they would take me inside, and then my memory is gone. I don't remember anything for the entire day of school. I would wake up on the bus going back home.
Wow.
And I don't know, like, the only thing that when I ask about it now is that I do know that they were doing testing on me, testing my abilities. But I don't remember that. So I kind of want to do a couple of regressions to see what I could find out. But I do know this. It was before I had integrated my second soul fragment. So I wasn't very powerful then. I was, still in kindergarten. I didn't have, I had, abilities, but they were nowhere near where they are now. Of course, things develop over time. And as I integrated soul pieces, they developed. So it was before that. So I don't think they gleaned a lot, is what I was told, which is good for me. But that did incur me an FBI number. And I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah,
when I was,
FBI number. Can you explain that?
yeah. So when I was, like I said, there was government entities always seeking to hire me. I was sought out, headhunted by the CIA and the FBI. And when I was in that process of wanting to, because I thought, oh, I'm going to work for the government, that'd be so cool. And the lady that I was interviewing with told me, she goes, did you know you have an FBI number? This was on the CIA side. And I said, FBI number, what's that? She goes, I can't tell you. She says, but you can Google it. And I said, okay. So I Googled it, and the definition has changed too, by the way. I Googled it recently, and it's not the same. Anyways, before it said it's given to a terrorist or a person of interest.
A person of interest.
Person of interest. So yeah, thought that was interesting. And she said I'd had it before I reached before the age of 18. So
do you ever get rid of it, or is that always there?
I can't. That's assigned by the government. So yeah.
Right. Have you done any regression work to find out when you were a child what was going on there?
No, but I do have something on the books with Sarah. So
okay.
So she's going to do a QHHT session on me.
Oh, great. Well, definitely keep us posted on that one.
Yeah.
Sarah's going to come in next month. We'll have her on here as a guest. So and if you guys haven't seen, I see Ben and Heather here. Sarah did a regression with them on the boat that I posted on the cruise. I think Wade will get mad at me when I call it a boat. Anyways, so fascinating stuff. Wow, there's so many things. We haven't even gotten into why you are Mina the Andromedan. So maybe we'll go there, because there's so many other tangents, and we can backtrack if we need to.
Yes. So what makes me unique is I came into this incarnation with all my memories intact. So I remember all my past lives. But it started linearly. Is that a word?
Yeah, linearly. Yeah, sure.
It started that way, in the sense that my most recent incarnation I remembered first. So as a child, I came in with that one, the Mentalcan Mermaid, and the Syrian Bee lives, memories. Now, it wasn't every memory from every life, but it was memories from each life. So I always had Archangel Michael with me as a child, and I had always had dreams of being. I used to think my previous incarnation was a narwhal, because
a narwhal. What's that?
A narwhal is it's an earth creature. It's a cetacean whale.
Oh, with the unicorn horn?
Yeah,
That one. Yeah, 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 okay. I know what,
yeah.
yeah,
So
just my wife
I,
draws those all the time in her paintings.
yeah, I mean, what kind of child knows what that is even? There's most adults don't even know what that is.
Right, right.
And they thought they went extinct in the 80s, by the way, which is an interesting Mandela effect, because then they found out, oh, well, they didn't go extinct. They've always been here. But now if I try to find out information about, oh, well, they didn't, people used to think they went extinct. Now you can't find it. But anyway, so I
Huh.
had these dreams. I had dreams of being a mermaid. I was like a spy, working in underwater submarines, not submarines like our submarines. They're very advanced technology. And then I had dreams of being an angel. And so these are all, memories I later found
Mhm.
out. And so the next ones that came to me were my Lyrian, Pleiadian, Speakin, Procyon. And the very last one that came to me was my furthest incarnation, my origin in this universe, which was Andromeda. So I got them in that order. So since that's my most recent, and now also the position I hold on the Andromedan Council, I say, the Andromedan. So
Yeah, so describe that Andromedan Council. Yeah, how does that work?
so every race of being has a council that makes decisions for kind of their collection of their star system, their grouping, I should say. But mine particularly is from the Messier 31 Andromeda galaxy, not the Andromeda constellation. So there's an important distinction there. It's the furthest away in our universe from where we are now, and it is the closest to the Shapley attractor, which is the center of our universe, the giant spiral, which is also the portal to the omniverse, and the Oventon, which is the collection of multiverses. So that, I believe, since I know I didn't come from this universe, is why my furthest incarnation started there, because it's the closest to where I was in another universe. So sitting
Right.
the Andromedan Council is the beings from the Andromedan Messier 31. And we make decisions based on that collection of Andromedan, the galaxy for that sector in space. So
Now I've heard that Andromeda is like the Milky Way and Andromeda. It's like those are the polarities, right? Masculine and feminine, where
yeah.
Andromeda would be more feminine and Milky Way would be masculine. And there's sort of this uh dualism going on there. And even perhaps a merging of these
Emerging,
galaxies.
yes.
Yeah. So in that galaxy, I've heard it's almost like the opposite of what we have, like how we perceive reality is just very, very different from that. Do you have any insights on how how do the Andromedans perceive reality?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can tell you about my specific race. So it's it's the ability to have non-corporeal form and corporeal form, but mostly it's light being. So very, very high density. So when you reach a certain density, you no longer have physicality,
Mhm.
but they can have the ability to involute. But they are, a lot of them would say, like the females are the leaders in the community. And they do run, it's very, I guess you could say, matriarchal system. They also don't procreate like humans procreate. They turn into energy, split the energy, and then the energy involutes if it needs to have form or some type of form. And so they're shapeshifters.
Mhm.
They are equally left and right brained, meaning they have the ability to be scientifically or artistically inclined. They are the diplomats, mitigators, and mediators of the universe. This is what the Andromedan Council's position is. They often help in negotiations between species when there's, you know, um, rivalry or just some kind of skirmish or words are escaping right now, English. When there's
Conflict.
some kind of conflict. Thank you. So when there's some kind of conflict, they will often intercede. They often champion the underdog. They are the shapeshifting ability. What's interesting, and the reason why they have this is that they choose to become other beings so that they can communicate better, which is where the propensity for languages comes from for Andromedan starseeds, is because that ability and that need to connect with all species and understand and create and foster diplomacy and peace. So they are very much like that. Their perception of reality is they don't understand the lower chakras, that the grounding, that root, that fight or flight, that, you know, defending, kind of all of that is very alien, so to speak.
Do they
So
just not have that in their, do they not, those lower chakra spectrums are not there?
right. So,
The
remember I
Andromedan? Okay.
said most of the higher density beings do not. And since they are anywhere from ninth density and above, and they
Mhm.
live for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, they don't, in fact, they don't, it's not that they die, they just choose to not anymore. They choose to not exist.
Oh, okay.
So they don't understand that need to dominate, that need for control, that need for you know, subjugation, or but also the polarity of that, or the other side of the spectrum would be that need to be dominated, that need to you know, experience all of those lower density things. So they also don't have the lower density of emotion. They feel empathy, or they feel sympathy but not empathy. And they feel like in all of the higher spectrum, higher frequency of emotions like love and joy and all of that. But they don't feel like the lower range. So the jealousy, the anger, you know, it's just not, it's a foreign concept to them.
Have the reptilians
Or
ever?
ventured off into Andromeda, and is that just the frequency so different for them?
They, because they couldn't operate on their world, they're, the Andromedans are very, very highly evolved, and it just kind of, they're out of reach, so to
Okay.
speak. So
Yeah.
that's why they became the diplomats and the mediators and mitigators, because they could. They kind of, it's not that they were accepted by the reptilians, but the reptilians were just kind of didn't care about them either way, because they didn't see them as a threat, because they, you know, when something can't take form, for the form, so to speak,
Mhm.
you know, you're not going to have an argument with energy, and you're not going to have an argument with, with a gaseous being. Like, it just seems
Right,
silly
right,
at that point. So
right,
and
right.
it's not like they had anything that the reptilians wanted. They didn't have resources that they needed or anything like that. So
I
yeah,
see.
we got lucky in that aspect.
I see. I see. So
What is that? What is that spark that creates the desire for an Andromedan to go through human karmic cycles and get involved in this crazy story here that we're dealing with?
Yeah. So most Andromedans from the Messier 31 galaxy have not originated from there, meaning they all come from another universe. So they came here for the process of helping their own universe. If we want to look at it in a very base way, they came here to experience. There are other universes, okay? The other universes don't have this polarity and duality. They don't have. They're literally, especially the one I come from, the one that I created, was just light, literally just light. It was where magic comes from, where fae come from, where some avians come from. And so if you're looking at it like source, in this instance, it would be primordial mother source, wanted to experience all facets of herself. And she created these universes with prime creator source in each one. And then they in turn want to, you know, experience themselves, and we're expressions. You would continue on your soul, which your fractal source, to continue to outreach to experience other facets. And so, you know, that's kind of the goal, is for every fractal to experience itself in all ways, and to find that kind of balance and that singularity event. So that's exactly what I did coming here. I wanted to, and what a lot of others want to, is this is the only universe, and humans being the only creation, like I said, that can utilize all the chakras and can have that spirituality inside physicality, and that perfect balance. So the ability is there. And so many people, including, or many beings, including myself, wanted to experience that and be kind of boots on the ground. I mean, obviously, if you're a diplomatic type race, you're going to want to, you know, experience bringing that and kind of mediating and that kind of diplomacy and helping foster peace during this
see.
time.
So you're kind of like sending,
You're reporting back to the council, like on boots on the ground. This is what's happening. These are the combining of the chakras and what I'm feeling, and so sending them
Yeah.
information so they can also.
My position's a little different. So I was sent
Okay.
here to help starseeds. So I help other starseeds. That's my job. And I do things that are enabling starseeds to do their job, which is to help humanity and to keep bringing out this wave of, you know, love and sending it out, and this empowerment to the entire starseeds and then humanity. So
Well, isn't everyone a star seed or no?
no.
No. Okay. Can you share your perspective on that?
So my perspective on that is that we are not all star seeds, because not all, we're sovereign beings. We choose what we want to do. And there is a strain of human that evolved. So celestials involuted. So that's how we get where we are now, is them involuting and then genetically splicing and coming together in different ways, sometimes genetically modification, sometimes the natural way, mixing with a lot of what Inky did in his kind of genetics and tinkering with what was already created to create subspecies. So that's kind of where we get this umbrella of different genomes and DNA. So now, having said that, there are souls there, I believe, in my view, that there are NPCs that do not have.
we were talking about that just a couple of weeks
ago.
ago.
Yeah. NPCs. Everybody knows what an NPC is, right? Non-player
No.
character in a video game.
Yeah. So
they're kind of like when you're playing a video game, you know, if you're playing Zelda and you have the village that you're going through, and there's just random people that are computer generated people there to sort of give this idea that there's a village that you're going through, but they're really, you try to interact with them, they like walk into walls and stuff, you know.
or they have only one set phrase, you know, it's just like they're programmed. They don't really think outside of their programming.
Right.
And so that's what we mean when I say NPC, I mean someone who cannot think outside of their programming.
Well, and Dr. Drew I forget the actual, I put it in like 2 weeks ago. There was a post that I put that it was on one of Dr. Drew's shows. I don't know if you watch his stuff, but great guy. Anyways, he's there's a physical name for it. I'll put it in the comments here. But it's literally like 30 to 40% of the population don't have an inner dialogue where they actually like, I just thought everybody had the, thinking about things in their own, contemplating, thinking, calculating, what is this, and having that inner dialogue. I just figured all humans did that, but it seems that not all do. So this is the NPCs you're talking about.
Yeah, and 30 to 40% is accurate. That's what I've been given, the ratio I've been given as well on the planet.
Okay.
So then you have the 30 to 40% of the population, which is NPC. So those are not evoluting. So then you have the human species that there were some that came from Magnochromin, and then there was the other that came from that originally or later on developed into Homo sapiens.
Right.
So yeah, so those are the celestials. And I'm sorry, the Magnochromin, you would know them as like the original, what was the Magnochromin? Hercules would be, because then we've got the Speakins that integrated with the humans at the time. And then from there, so then there's another one, what is it called? The Neanderthal that came from, so there is a species that didn't evolve, that had those genomes that were cut off and sealed. And so basically they have the propensity or the ability to evolute, but if they choose not to, they won't. And so that's the ones I'm talking about, because remember, we're sovereign, right? So you have the choice to either become and ascend or not. And so if you choose not to ascend, you will stay as human. So that's when I say staying as human, that's what I mean.
I see.
Choosing not to evolute.
And sorry, I was looking for that link. I'll find it. I'll post it later. But okay, so you're here to help the star seeds awaken to their star seed origins, which we should get into. I want to. I can't forget. Remind me, guys. I don't want to forget about mermaids. We got to go back and talk about mermaids. But since we're on this line of thought, one of the great things that I found your work, you did for me a starseed sort of chart that seemed very accurate as far as it really resonated with me and sort of this journey, through this interview with Ed journey that I've been on, and the different groups and species that I been interacting with and doing these interviews. So can you explain that, the chart and how you and what you do, and that'll probably open up a ton of other questions, but
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in the end of December, beginning of January, I was told by source and my higher self that I would develop this program. And it would be based on your natal chart. So use your time of birth, your date of birth, your location of birth. And then I would use the star placements to then create connections. And then those connections would help align you to where you came from. And I would then be able to tell a starseed their origin. Now, that came with a caveat, because only starseeds that were connected to me or connected to my universe that I created would find me or seek me out. There has never been a single human that will ever seek me out. It's just, I'm not in their field of vision, so to speak. I usually also only work with starseeds that are advanced souls that will become advanced starseeds. So I'm even more niche in that aspect, because I don't really deal too much with starseeds who are just waking up. If they are just waking up, they're going at a very exponentially fast rate. So I'm going to tell you, from the moment you fractaled from source in this universe, that's important to note, and all the way to your most recent incarnation by carnation, all the interactions you had with ETs, every karmic connection you had, all your gifts that you should have access to if you don't already, and how it relates to this incarnation, and what connection, what karmic balance, so to speak, you carried over into this life.
Okay. And how do you find that? Is it a combination of software and your just your intuition, or?
It's a very basic program. This is, yeah, I wouldn't, software I think would be is glamorizing it, because it's really
Okay.
simple, a web thing that I developed. And so basically, and I couldn't do it again, don't ask me to do it again. But essentially it's just taking the natal chart. So that's just a normal, thing. And then
lots of software that does that already. Yeah.
And then you just basically are doing the extra connections. And so it can go up to, let's see, A, B, C, D. It goes all the way up to G connection. So you can have, if your soul is very advanced, you have a lot of different connections, it will go up to this G connection. But essentially, yeah, I use then my abilities to look in the record of all records, which is different than the Akashic records. The Akashic records are kind of what people do for like humans and for, starseeds. But then there's the book of records, which is above that. And then there's the record of all records, which is the omniverse records. And so I can access that. So even if you don't have your time of birth, I can find that for you.
Wow.
And then I use that as well as my abilities and my connection with source and what I know to then figure out what your jobs were, what you did, sometimes even relationships, sometimes even twin flame connections, or twin ray is really my specialty. But and then also kind of how it relates and tie it back in, and also to be able to see all your gifts and know what they are. So I have my clients write them down. They'll write down their gifts, and then at the end they'll tell me, oh, this is what I have access to, and you hit every single one. So my program doesn't tell me that.
Right. So I remember us doing that it's kind of an hour and a half type of, it's reading. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of hours.
It's like 2 hours to sometimes it goes over depending on the soul. So yeah, it can be intense.
It's been a while, and I should have updated. I should have looked at it again, but do you remember in my case, I remember I had a reptilian lifetime, right? That was interesting.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
that sort of went back more to Octurian Palladian, right? I think was more of my, I
Um,
remember. Or we had a cross in Andromeda somewhere. I don't
yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah, definitely because we had a connection.
Yeah.
Let me see. Actually, I can just pull it up real quick and look to be sure because I'm kind of curious. I do so many of these, I'll be honest, I don't remember.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry to throw you on the spot like
No, no,
that.
no, no, no. Oh yeah, Antarian. You were Antarian. That's right.
Antarian, right.
Yes, but you did have lives in my galaxy as well. But you did originate. Was it Antarian? Yeah, you're Antarian. That's right. So the Antarians are the mantid beings. They are
Ah, that's
considered the
my Mantis
architects.
connection. Yes.
Yeah, the architects of the Matrix. Some would even call them. But they,
Yeah,
what's
that's what I
really
call them.
cool, my soulmate, she is Antarian, and we do amazing galactic missions together. And they're in charge for actually all the stargates that go to source. They're all the stargates that connect to the waypoint stations where souls that have trouble ascending and need to be healed go. They also have connections to all the stargates for transportation. Um, and they also have connections to relocation of planets. So sometimes planets need to be relocated and star systems from either to be like the ones that are alleviated. No, they are removed from their control of the reptilians. Word. Yeah,
Okay.
not a lot of languages, you forget English. So so they're in charge of that too, and they create these vectors, portals, and wormholes to move even entire systems, which is really amazing.
Wow.
Do that actually on the daily. We have missions, so that's part of my work with the Andromedan Council. So I do a lot of 5D work. I will literally be called to a mission, and I have to answer it. Usually, it's for emergencies. They don't really contact me unless it's something big.
Yeah, how does that work if you're having this human experience here? Can you fractal off and do that, or do you have to literally like stop what you're
um,
doing and go and
it's
like
both.
Batman's signal kind of thing in the sky?
Yeah, it's both. So my Batman signal is my left eye goes into the 5D. I can't see. I can't see the 3D. Literally, my vision goes. I can't see anything in the 3D.
Wow.
Just the left eye. And so the right eye, so it's very strange. So actually, when I was little, I had a lazy left eye. Now I know why. That's actually connected. So anyways, the left eye goes into the 5D, and I can't see. I can only see the 5D. And so then they'll get my attention. I need to do something. So I have to usually, I sometimes can stop what I'm doing. If I'm in a place I can stop what I'm doing, I do. I focus.
Right.
Sometimes I'll be driving and it will happen. And I have to do light language and do stuff while I'm driving. But what's really cool is traffic will all move out of my way. And it's safe. It's just autopilot. I'm driving, but I'm not there.
Okay. You
It's
don't need
always
a Tesla.
I don't need a Tesla now. It's always super safe.
Right.
But I will be doing things like there was a big tower that went down on Neptune that I had to go and help energetically fix. So a lot of it has to do with technology, but it's usually a very big thing. Like it causes a crisis if this doesn't get fixed.
Wow.
Sometimes we have a fleet of Andromedan ships that needs to come through to when like because we have a lot of stuff going right now in our solar system, and lots of races are coming because things are we'll say accelerating to a big event that's going to happen. And so I have to open these vectors with my team. I have a team in 3D. Natalie's part of it, my soulmate's part of it, and they all see and do what I'm doing, and so we all get the notice at the same time to go. And so
Wow.
we chat and we go, and then we are doing the things, and we're helping this tower to get relegated. And basically what needs to happen is something became, you could think of it as, but it's this tower is taking energy from the central sun and helping to power it, because when you become a type 2 race, a space age race, or a solar system or population, what's the word I'm looking for, then you can't.
Civilization.
Yes. Well, I think we call it population type 2. But anyway, you basically can take the energy from the central sun and use it to power everything. So they don't do any those rudimentary power ways that we do here on Earth. But you can take that, and they use these big towers. So sometimes if that goes out, this one time I had to intercede and help Natalie, and we both I was driving long distance on a road trip to Austin. And so I zone out, I'm driving and probably going like 85 miles an hour. And
Okay.
I'm working on this tower with her, and we had to fix and put the connections. And this is all energetically, and we had to get it going, and then the energy could talk to the other one, and then it could take the energy from the central sun down into it and start powering the planet again. But the whole planet went dark, so that was a big emergency type thing that I had to do. So yeah, and it was really cool is my Antarian soulmate, she can see, she draws whatever I'm seeing. I don't tell her anything. She just can pick up what I'm doing. And so she puts a physical representation to it to help us kind of navigate in the 3D, like what we need to do. Like if we can't articulate something to each other, like, no, this piece needs to be fixed. Like, you know, then she will draw it. And then in that way we can fix what needs to be done. So that's just some of the missions we do, but it can happen at any time. And each race has the way of getting hold of me. So the archangels have a totally different way. I'll get tingling and moving in my shoulder blades, and my wings will move. So ever since I was little, my shoulder blades move in a very strange way, and certain feelings, human feelings, will make them move, and I can flex them and move them like wings. Sounds silly, but so anyway, that's how they get a hold of me, and I'll feel this tingling in my shoulder blades, and I know that they need to contact me. And then I'll look and then figure out what it is that they need and do whatever missions I got to do there. And sometimes I'll even get rashes that will just magically appear. And if I don't address the 5D, if I ignore the council, it will get worse and worse and then turn into pain. And then it goes away immediately after I do whatever I got to do. So.
Wow. All right. There's a
lot there, and I want to start opening it up to questions now. So first question for me, going back, so we kind of got, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, but I want to go into the mermaid experience. So tell us about that life, and I'm assuming it was during Atlantean times, or Lemurian times. No,
It's
prior.
actually before, way before
Oh,
that. So
okay.
I originated from Artuvia, which is a planet. It's actually a binary planet system that has another planet called Tutalumia that is connected by these crazy waterways, and one is pink and kind of one is like bluish purple. The water is pink on Artuvia, and on Tutalumia it is like this bluish purple, depending on where the sun is. And they're the ancient Mintakian race of mermaids. So they are far removed from the mermaids that have evolved here on Earth and Sirius B. So prior to their removal or their relocation, prior to the Orion Wars was Artuvia and Tutalumia. And they are more how you would think a Little Mermaid type. They are humanoid with a warrior attitude. So think Aquaman for attitude and race. And then very much warrior. They always had like an element like electricity that they would use, and of course water, but there wasn't much land. The land that they did have was actually on the sister planet Tutalumia, where they developed the ability to form legs for the use of like an organic technology. And so they harness that ability. Anyway, when they're, of course, the Draconian Prime Directive is to dominate and control. So when they arrived to their planet, they were like, submit or die. And they're like, we'll fight to the death, because that's their attitude. And so they did, and their planet was destroyed in the Mintakian region. And so they were relocated by interceded by the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds to escape into these portals that were hidden deep in these underwater caverns. And some were relocated to Sirius B, some were relegated to Earth, others to Spica and Capella systems. So yeah, so they went wherever there was water. Now, over time, they evolved into different ways. So that's why the mermaids in Sirius B are different because the water is different. And on Earth, they're way different because water is so dense. And that's why they're kind of scary here and they look scary because they have had to evolve in a way that protected themselves because Earth is a very rough place. So they have become a little rough here.
So a mermaid from Sirius B to a mermaid to Earth is going to be a very
and
different
a
type
mermaid
of
from ancient, the ancient
in the ancient.
is going to
Fascinating.
be so.
Well, I mean, I could keep going forever, but let's get into some questions here. Paul has his hand up. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Mina, I just want to say I had a great session with you, and so wanted to recommend to the other folks here, your work. I did have a question about one of the things you had mentioned during our session. So it was basically to the effect that the Earth needed healing, and there was kind of a call to action, but something to the effect the Earth had already gone. So I don't know. I'll just kind of see what you meant by that.
That the Earth had already gone. Can you give me a little bit more context?
Well, yeah, I was kind of trying to figure that out at the time, and I didn't really understand. But basically, ascended, maybe, perhaps, or I don't know. But do I understand correctly
About the
that
multiple
basically there was a
timelines?
call? Perhaps. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So I think if I recollect correctly, that I was talking about how there's already a timeline that exists where Gaia has ascended. Is that what you're talking about? That
Yeah. I think. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, there is already as multidimensional, especially the starseeds that are multidimensional, because I'm finding out that not all starseeds are multidimensional yet. They not all starseeds can do what I do and going in between the timelines and different universes. So there is timelines that already exist where we've already seen that Earth has ascended. There's already ascended humans, ascended of course celestials, and we've already seen that timeline, so to speak. So we already know by definition of it existing that it's already a possibility, it's already more a probability even. So I think that that's what I was referring to. So it's just a matter of getting there, right? Everybody's got to get there, do the work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Stephen, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for being with us today, Mina.
For having me.
Well, that was an interesting thread of topic. It makes me think of one thing that I think about a lot, and understanding parallel universes. When people say they're existing at the same time. So I'm really curious about that, and I want to ask about that. But my question actually is in regards to point of view. Really helps me. I notice, and when people speak the uniqueness of the human condition, and that you reference the 7 chakras.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to understand more about the other point of view and how our point of view relates on this Earth 3-dimensional reality.
From the point of view of someone on Earth, or
No, oh, sorry, just how reality is experienced from different levels of understanding the chakras, or.
Yeah. So, well, there's more than 7 chakras than what most humans perceive as the 7. There's way more.
Yeah.
But so I guess that could affect, I mean, depending on your density, that would affect on how you perceive reality. I mean, there's a really good experiment that was done. I'm terrible with names, so I'm not going to remember who did it. But essentially, it was like, if you were at a second density and you were perceiving a third density or fourth density or fifth density object, what would that look like to this second density being, right? And so there's the point of like taking a 3D apple and putting it on a piece of paper, and those points where it touched are the only points that the second density of a being would perceive. And so that it kind of goes the same where I was even talking about the 15th density being that I was talking to, I actually realized was a higher version of myself, where I couldn't speak to, I was in, it was around, it was me, I was it. There was no way for me to articulate or even even think about how I could articulate the level of density that this being was at. So understanding it from a lower perspective, right, this higher density being, it almost could have possibly fractaled my mind in a way, because it's so far outside of our understanding. And the same goes when you're perceiving different densities from the third or fourth or fifth density, especially if it's higher or even if it's lower, right? We're all perceiving reality in a unique way, and how we perceive that reality depends on where we are at in density. But it's going to look different. So it doesn't mean that any one way is right or wrong, but that it's just perceived differently. So
Yeah, let me chime in for a
Like,
second.
I think the analogy I use all the time is like a fishbowl. You know, when the fish are, when you're inside the water and you sort of see, and you see that reality that's inside the water, it's very different than when you're outside and you're trying to outside look in through the fishbowl, and there's going to be distortion. The fish are going to look depending on the cut of the glass and all that. So that's sort of, and those are close density. So if you're going further away, it's going to be so different different experience.
Yeah, it's a mind trip. But yeah, and so there's multiple ways to perceive even the same thing. So sometimes you can perceive something and think it's a different thing just by seeing the same thing from a different angle. Yeah. So we have to remember that, and also try to be open-minded when we look at different perceptions. Yeah.
Can I follow up just for a moment? Thanks.
Yeah.
Hopefully this doesn't take too long. I guess I understand the idea of dimensions and I can sense those and feel those, but it's the uniqueness of the three-dimensional reality. I've heard Bashar talk about it a little bit, like how our human Earth three-dimensional reality experience is unique. That's, I guess, what I'm mainly curious about.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on whether you're thinking about the holographic model and that we are creating everything that we are perceiving, and we're perceiving it in our own unique way, and how it goes back to how what I might perceive something my way is not going to be the way you perceive it. So in a way, it's we're creating these separate realities existing in the same plane and dimension, because we're seeing something a different way, right? But it does, it still exists. It exists in your way. It exists in my way. So that's what makes this reality so unique, because we can create those different avenues and kind of create these different timelines even, and create these different worlds just by our perception of it. So yes, it is Bashar is very correct. I do like a lot of what I've seen of Bashar and what he says, and that this 3D reality is very unique. But that's kind of the thing, as we continue to ascend, we're no longer going to perceive this 3D reality the same way. So that's why it's always changing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Stephen, I do another talk about timelines and understanding time, and I go into sort of how the individual bubble merges with the collective bubble, and that collective bubble experience is how we see reality. I'll do a review of that, but I think there's somewhere in the archives here we'll find that and put that out there.
That's a whole topic.
Yeah, we could spend 3 hours just on that. So, but great stuff. Thank you. All right. Sophia.
Hi, Mina. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about, because you mentioned it, Capella, because it's a system and, race or beings that doesn't come up very often. And I know there's like myself and at least one other in the group who are interested to know.
Yeah, so there are very few Capella beings that have incarnated at this time, but they are a Lyrian offshoot, in the sense that their DNA does come from Lyra, but not feline always. So actually the Capella beings can be bear beings. I've seen moose ones. I've seen feline as well, but more like, when I say feline, I think more like North American feline. So this type of, what are they called? Puma, mountain lion, even panther, some from South America. So this kind of like lineage, so to speak. And so there are even, I think even another one I saw. Raccoon was a raccoon type being, came from there as well. So yeah, but they are Lyrian offshoots, so their DNA does come from Lyra, but they are closely related and also very close to Earth. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Treb is from Capella.
Yeah, I came across that recently. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. My best friend loves Treb. She thinks he's awesome. And I'm like, he's from Capella, apparently.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
Treb
not
is
many I've come across.
a reptilian being from that's been on the show, and a benevolent reptilian channeled by Rob Gauthier.
Very
Cool.
cool. Yeah, they're very rare. I've only come across a few in my readings.
Awesome. Anything else, Sophia?
No. Oh, you said there's some mermaids and stuff ended up there too. Do they tend to like take in refugees from lots of places?
There's a lot of planets that take in refugees. And I'll be honest, the Andromedans always lead up the negotiations for helping refugees. They just, like I said, they always tend to help the underdog. So they will foster these relationships where people will take refugees, especially for a race that requires water, right? So if there are limited places that have water, and so they are always, doing negotiations with beings that do have water, and Capella is one of them. That system has water and some of those planets. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you. Mina, I have a very quick follow-up question because I was also surprised to hear that we are not all star seeds. I thought we were. So I wanted to ask, in fact, can we recognize if we are or are not? And is there any disadvantage? Is there also the possibility to awaken for the non-star seed? So is this an extra hurdle to overcome? Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So the everybody here, if you're on this path, you're a starseed. You would not be on this path if you were not a starseed, because you have consciously made a choice to ascend in this way at this time. Okay. Now, where it gets a little tricky or a little bit of a gray area is when you start talking about when humans are ascending, but they don't, they never followed this path, meaning this path of searching, of feeling like they don't come from here, feeling like they don't belong, that kind of overwhelming feeling that came all throughout their lives, maybe that they've struggled, been the black sheep, or just had trouble assimilating. And those are underlying characteristics of starseeds as I talk about them. Now, when you talk about, let's say, for example, you're a starseed and you're in a partnership with somebody who is not awakened. There's a difference between being not awakened and not being a starseed. So you can be a starseed and not be awakened at this time. That is possible. But they will always either choose to ascend or they will choose to leave. So, but most, I would say 90% of the time they're going to ascend because they've chosen to be here at this time. Remember, this is all pre-contractual. You're not here against your will. It may feel like that. It may have felt like that growing up. It may have felt like that even as an adult, but you all made the choice to be here in your higher density self prior to arriving on this planet. So having said that, the humans that choose to ascend will ascend by way of a subconscious choice, and they won't understand all of this, but they still will choose to ascend even if their higher self chooses or their soul chooses, and they will be open to receiving that ascension. So that is different than a starseed choosing to walk this path to help ascend others. Okay, so if you are worried about loved ones not coming with you because they're not awake, don't worry. Okay, the whole point is you need to focus on yourself. When you ascend yourself and you do that inner work, you will affect the environment around you. You will ascend others just purely by your energy. I've seen it happen. I am living proof of it. My family is living proof of it. You can absolutely continue to shift timelines and be in a timeline where your family and friends have ascended. Okay, they may not be the same version, but you're not gonna, the differences you perceive are gonna be positive, right? So I would just not try to focus on that aspect, but focus on your inner work and just understand that you are ascending and you will ascend to an environment where it will be the earth you're creating, right? And that involves your family and friends. So I feel that that is where that was stemming from. If I'm incorrect, let me know.
Yes, no, that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No
Yeah,
problem.
what do you have
To
to
say for, I know I'm very lucky in my relationship right now, but not everybody is. And some people who might come to the realization that they may be in a relationship with an NPC. What do you do? What
I don't really see that
you
happening.
don't?
I'll be
No, you
honest.
don't see that. Okay.
It's that's a pre-contractual thing, and you wouldn't choose that. Again, you need a partner that can help you during this time. So unless you're decided pre-contractually to check out and not watch the ascension, I can't see that happening at all.
So do you think, I guess at this time, do you think that it's possibility that, let's say there was a relationship between two people and one of them is awakening to their starseed origins and sort of evolving, and they're in this NPC relationship? Do you just see that not working at all? That like
Yeah,
they just
so I've actually already dealt with that with a few clients, and I've dealt with all the range. So I've dealt where a client was in a relationship where the partner wasn't awake yet, but was a starseed.
Mhm.
And by the way, he's now awake and he is going to starseed classes. So it absolutely does work, and it's happening exponentially because time is speeding up.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing about it. Now, if I've also seen it where a starseed is in a relationship with somebody who is not, who's either an NPC or chose not to awaken during this time,
Right.
and the relationship is dissolving. So, and it will naturally happen organically. It just, you cannot be in full authenticity with yourself and on your mission if you're not being loved and supported at home.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah,
So-
I was in one of those relationships a while, a long
And that
time
could
ago.
be a karmic
yeah.
relationship. It could have been
Sure.
it could have served in helping your ascension path. And so it always serves a purpose, but
Yeah,
they can't
totally.
be NPCs and help you ascend. It just doesn't work like that. You would have ended it long ago. Like I couldn't even see it happening because again, by definition, the NPC cannot interact that way.
Well, the difficult part, I think, for me was, we're listening to this, channeled and spiritual and higher information that we don't want to have judgment and we want to make everything work. And I think for, at least in my situation at that time, this was years ago, but I was like, no, I'm going to pick the higher path and be in this relationship. It doesn't matter if our beliefs are different. We still love each other, so we'll make it work. So you sort of hang in there. And then until I had a work opportunity that I had to be away for like a month on a work job, and then I realized how happy I was being single or away from that relationship. And I was like, what am I doing to myself here? I'm just like, so that's when I realized I had to call it off because I was struggling
And that
with
was your
this.
growth, and that was
Right.
your growth moment. And what's really interesting is about those karmic relationships is that they can oftentimes be a karmic connection from your past, and I will be able to identify those in your chart, by the way. But more importantly is there are two types of soul groups. Okay, there is your primary soul group and your secondary soul group. Your primary soul group is about 5 to 25 souls that travel with you throughout your lifetime. Not every lifetime, but a lot of them, and they're equal footing with you spiritually and a soul advanced age wise. And they can be siblings, they can be friends, they can be mentors, they can be lovers, they can sometimes be parents or children, and they serve to follow you. And so it's not necessarily a growth relationship, but more of a companionship. Then the secondary soul group is a minimum of 1,000 souls. And they are put there, they're not on your spiritual level, which meaning they can be higher, they can be lower. And they're either helping your growth by giving you a leg up or a kick in the rear end. So it's those two avenues, and those can be parents usually, it can be siblings, it can be enemies, it can be religious leaders, it can be mentors, it can be a whole wide variety of beings. But they always help you in your growth. NPC does neither. In fact, it can help you in the sense that you can realize they exist and realize that, yeah, not everybody has a soul.
So are we at
This sort of fork in the road now with our with the starseeds ascending or moving into this higher density, where we are having to trim the fat, so to say? I don't know, it's a kind of a bad way to say that, but it feels so. It's like, because I've always like, we're all gonna go, you know, we're on this together, we're gonna, if we shift the collectively, then we wake up everybody else. Is that, and I know that still happens, I know that everybody will come along, but I think for the group that we're in, or you know, the whatever the group, starseed, or just this ascension path that we're on, it seems that we're at this period now where we have to make very clear, discerning decisions on how we navigate life, you know, choose carefully, choose our
Yeah.
path carefully, so to say.
Yeah, so the timelines have split, and we're now at a precipice of where we're choosing our final ascension trajectory. So it really is a very clear choice. We can see the delineation very clearly. And what that means is that if you are not living in your authenticity, on your mission and on your path, you're making the decision to not ascend. And so that means living in your truth. And however difficult that might be, and in living in your truth, in not only your work, but your society, your family, your friends, your whole complete circle, because that energy is what propels you onto the higher ascension. And if you're not generating enough, you're not going to make it, and you're going to continue on the other timelines created into the other versions that are still going to do some cycles. So this is very much the time of like, God, there's a Texas saying I really want to say so bad, but it's got a curse word in it. But it's really that.
That's fine. We're not.
It's really that choice of like shit or get off the pot. You know,
Yeah.
decision. You know,
Totally.
and yeah, there's a very, very strong delineation, and so that's because we're speeding exponentially, right? We're going towards that singularity point.
Right.
It's very quickly you can just diverge and be kicked off the path. So.
Yeah. And I don't want to beat a dead horse with this subject, but again, the you know, I know grace comes into play, this navigating of standing in our truth, still using our external reality as an integrity pressure gauge. You know, if we're going too far and extreme in some way, you know, our communities and our people around us will very quickly school us and put us back in. And so we need that outside confirmation in a sense, but standing in our truth. So that there's a lot of balancing that has to go on here. And I feel sometimes, especially when we're talking, you know, this is how, I guess my biggest fear is, how do we stand in our truths and do the stuff that we're talking about, but even have this idea of an ascension, of breaking off into its own thing. To me, that feels very culty. And that's what I want to be careful of, not going into some you know, specialized cult that we're different and you guys are, you know, the bad people, and we're gonna, you know, that to me
No,
that never
we're not
resonates.
assigning good or bad. Those are human
Right.
things. This is just a choice. It's literally a choice, and people are going to choose. They're sovereign beings, and they choose what they want to choose, just like you choose what you want to choose. So, you know, it's not about that they're less than. It is just they are choosing that for themselves. And so, you know, these iterations still continue on the ascension path. They're just taking a different route to get there. And, you know, that's kind of the thing. And so it really is about, when I say stay in your truth, you still want to be a bridge of consciousness. So you're not separating yourself, but you're keeping your boundaries in place, healthy boundaries, and you're being a bridge or a hand extended to those who want it. You don't force your beliefs on anything. You're just an extending hand. Take it if you want it, don't if you don't want it. It's that simple.
Yeah. Awesome. Looks like Sandra has
Another
another.
question. Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you. Just a very quick follow-up question because it fits into the topic here. Star seeds, the word seeds itself, I mean, it gives an impression again, we're all different seeds eventually. So I want to ask the question, if there's a way we can identify, like, no, if the seeds can have, like, the, hold on, how to put the question out. If there are particular characteristics to the different star seeds, and that can help us to identify our origin. That means why are we maybe a particular way, and all the individuals, they all have different characters and strength and so on. Is there some truth to this star seeds, and we can identify from where we come from?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, star seeds, the reason why we're called seeds is because we were planted here to spread and grow and spread our roots and grow and bear fruit and share this information, this knowledge to also help others grow and show them how to grow. And so each star seed originates being seeded from a different star system. That's why it's star seed. So we come from different systems. We do absolutely have characteristics, but not only do we're in this human avatar, so we have our soul essence, which, believe it or not, what I've found during the reports is that everybody's soul essence is essentially the same. That essence of who they are carries lifetime over lifetime over lifetime. You make different decisions, but that essence stays the same. So we have that. We've got our soul aspect characteristics. Then on top of that, from every star system, we carry traits from that too. Like if you think the Lyrans are very warrior type race. They're protectors, defenders, fighters for justice and for truth. And the same with the archangels, being very much defenders and having this righteous justice. And then you have like the mermaids, which having the affinity for water, again, still being warriors, but also, being very much in tune with nature. And then you have like speakins. If you have speakin in your chart, you naturally inherently have the ability to identify starseeds. You can actually look at somebody and know that they are starseed, which has been very helpful in mine because I had speakin, so I can actually identify starseeds just by, even before they know it. My soulmate, 2 years before she ascended, I identified she was a starseed and told her. And she was like, oh my God, I just remember that conversation we had 2 years ago. You told me I was a starseed. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, and now look where I am. So, yeah.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Mina. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Sandra. Laura, go ahead.
Hey, Laura.
I think I forgot I had my hand up. What, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we can
Because
hear you.
I think after I raised my hand, Reuben sort of touched on it. My question is, I mean, I've got a lot of questions for you, Mina, in terms of what you told me in my chart. But standing in your own truth, is there a definition to that? Like, I know that it's been kind of.
Yes. Well, I want to, standing in authenticity, so being true to yourself, to your soul essence, and to what you believe, but you have to be careful because you want to make sure that it's not a societal truth that's been programmed to you. So when I say standing in your authenticity and your truth, I mean that you've done your shadow work, you've done your trauma healing, and you're in a place of homeostasis, so to speak, of 0.0, what is that? 0 point energy.
Yeah, the
0 point energy field, the field.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you're in
In the
this kind
center.
of balance, when you're in the center of where you need to be and in your divine alignment, then staying there and all of that entails everything that you stand for, everything that brought you there, with the realization that you came to with unity consciousness and all of those things that are on that mission, that you stand true to that. I'm not talking about digging in your heels for whatever belief systems that were ingrained in your programming or stemming from trauma that it needs to be healed or shadows. I'm talking about in your truth, in your essence to your soul. So that's true.
So not necessarily, I mean, people who know me do kind of know, but like standing in your truth doesn't mean that you need to have a sign saying, you know, come to me when you're ready. If that makes sense. In terms of outwardly
Like
to the public, like publicly coming out of the spiritual closet, sort of, I guess.
So I would say that being out and open is absolutely standing in your authenticity and truth.
Okay.
If you're hiding who you are, you're not really being true to yourself.
Right. And I'm not in a closet, just saying.
Darcy closet, and it's not still in the garden, so to speak.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. One quick question from the chat.
This is back, let me find it. Back in regard to the idea of NPCs, I think. I think some people, okay, question. If that 30 to, the 30 to 40% NPC conversation that we're having, does that mean that those beings don't have souls?
So yeah, the way that I understand what I've been told is that they are literally background fillers. So they're not human. Humans have souls. Okay. So they still descended from the celestial DNA. It's just a little bit more diluted in the sense that their souls have had many incarnations on this planet and never had an incarnation in another star system. So NPCs are literally the perfect example. I've actually come in contact with one recently. Was going to a store, and this was right around the time when we had all those X-class flares that were happening, like we were getting hammered back to back. And literally they glitch out. So they do glitch out. And in a store, like asking, I was in a pet store actually, asking this guy where the cat food was. And he was like, he just stared at me for a minute. And he's like, I was like, do you know where the cat food is? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, can you show me where the cat food is? And he goes, yeah. And just sit there. And I was like, is it over there? And he goes, it's over there. And he just kind of repeated like a parrot what I was saying to him. And then I went over there and the cat food wasn't there. So I went back and I was like, and then he kind of like I couldn't get his attention. He was just like, and this happened right around the time. So I started feeling like heart palpitations and like, because the flare had hit Earth. And I was like having trouble breathing. And like he was literally glitching out. And it was the most bizarre thing. And so, yeah, I was like, yeah, definitely NPC. Because he was just like, no.
Soon they're going to start walking
into walls and they're just going to go into
exactly. Or just not be perceived in our reality anymore.
Yeah. Well, we have so many in this, I call them lost souls, not no souls per se, but lost souls, especially with the huge fentanyl issue that we have in America and across the world, but specifically in America. There's so many people that terrible that get addicted and go down that terrible path. And we're seeing it in our urban cities and stuff. Is that part of it, or is that a whole different thing? Is that just a different?
I feel like those are, I mean, in my personal perspective, I feel like those are pre-contractual agreements to experience addiction and to go down that path, because those are absolutely soul growth moments. I mean, there is nothing, if you talk to one person that has been through addiction, they will tell you the amount of growth that they've had in their journey. And, obviously sometimes that it will lead to, their eventual checking out. But,
right.
But yeah, absolutely. Because I recently had a client, her husband passed away that way. He had addiction and he knew that he would always leave that way. And he was actually sober when he left. He actually, she thought he was back on addiction, and he passed of actually something completely different. But because that she was definitely a karmic relation, but she loved him till the end, and he knew he was going to leave by way of that. And it was interesting that he actually, checked out, and he knew always.
Right. So in other words,
there's still hope for anybody who might have addiction issues and that kind of thing. We're gonna,
100%.
they're doing the work. Awesome. Okay, wait. Sneak in one more NPC question about, is it part of a false matrix. Have you heard that idea of a false matrix?
That NPCs are part of the false matrix.
Yeah. And what is the false matrix? I guess we should even define that. If that is even I don't know.
So yes, but I don't think it's in the way that people think it is, or maybe it is. I don't know how this person meant it, but the false matrix, how I would define it, is a matrix created by the reptilian draconian to basically enslave the human race to continue providing loosh energy for them. And essentially,
Like fiat currency.
yeah, this has already been dismantled. The false
Yeah.
matrix has already been dismantled. So seeing as how they're still NPCs, I would say they're not a part of the false matrix because they're still here and we have absolutely disabled it. Now I will say this, that when the X-class flares were going on, that is when, around the time when a lot of that matrix started being disabled, as well as the councils doing their work in the 5D. There was a lot of stuff that we had to do to disable that. A lot of energetic things, and also the meditations, believe it or not, have also been instrumental in that. So yeah, you will see less though. So maybe that some of them have started glitching out and they're no longer here. So like I said, we'll start to perceive them less and less. And if you're still perceiving them, then focus on that inner work, because that is what's going to enable you to move past that. So
Awesome. And I know
We one more question from Laura, but I wanted to ask if you would be up to do a little light language at the end for us to bring in some good energy. Awesome. Okay, so I just want to save some time for that. Okay, go ahead, Laura.
So back to standing in your own truth. I'm going to connect with you and try to work with you. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Why
Go
I'm
ahead.
not showing up here. So I'm going to connect with you to try to work with you privately. But so you told me that I had like 13 lives. This one being the first human. This one being the 13th. And then I had like 3 draconian, 3 archangel, and then some other stuff. So does standing in my truth mean that I integrate all of those things and that I understand that I am draconian art, like those are experience? So is draconian an experience, or is it
well,
me?
we're multi-dimensional,
mean,
right? So we're
right.
layers of and the whole point to what we're trying to do is to compress those layers into our being, to integrate those experiences, because they are experiences, but they're more than experiences too, because they're pieces of us, pieces of who we are, and they're experiences that help shape who we are as an essence. We are both light and we are both dark. So that is what you should embody and love and appreciate about yourself, is that you are all those facets, because you, more than a lot of people maybe even, have got to experience such a unique flavor of this expression of multidimensionality and these different facets by experiencing the dark and the light in such a way where they literally were 3 lives of the same, 3 lives of the same. So it's a really unique path that your soul chose. So it's integrating all of that and realizing that you're multidimensional, and what you align with is what your authenticity is. So remember, I told you it's what you align with. You are a sovereign being. You choose what you align with. So just integrating, I would say, and letting that create that full bodiedness. That is
I
you.
feel like I'm aligning with both of those types of energies. Now I don't really like with you, work with you more on like the duration of those lives, what they entailed and things like that. But yeah. Thank you. That's it.
thanks, Laura.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Jessica.
Hi. So I feel like that's what I'm having to work with right now is in a relationship that I am in, where I have to, not always run. I've always been the runaway. I've been addicted to drugs in my past, alcohol. I've had all of those things. And, every time I don't like when there's negativity now, how I feel in my own path, when there's something coming against me, I want to run. I want to run because that's what I do. But there's something else that pulls me back and says, you chose this and you've done a lot of awakening during this, this relationship. So I'm feeling like I'm having to learn how to accept a negative part of who I am in order to grow past it, and to let it go means, for me, is what I'm getting is you have to accept the negativity also, because it's also a part of who you are. So you don't have to run. You have to learn how to love that aspect of you without judgment, and not judging it, and just letting this other person just be who they are, and find a common ground, and just allow things to be. Because when I don't do that, then there's the chaotic energy, and then I'm fighting this, well, you should be doing this, and trust me, if you would just meditate and do the gateway experience, you would know what I'm talking about. Then you could be where I'm at. You could understand what I'm going through if you would just do what I'm doing, but again, then I have to say, well, then that's the control thing within me, wanting to change everything outside of me, the environment, so that I feel more safe. But I keep getting the message, no, that's not what I'm literally being told, no, that's not how this works.
You're doing your own shadow work. That's what shadow work is.
That's what I've been doing for 3 years. Like, when does it ever end?
Until you get the lesson, until you really, really nail it home and integrate it. Because, if you're still seeing the same pattern, then there's something you're not integrating. And the thing about shadow work is you're illuminating the shadows, you're identifying it. That's great. You identified it, but what are you doing about it?
I don't know.
Integrating. Well, that's why we're all, that's why shadow work seems to be an ever evolving process. Is later reintegrating these shadows. We're illuminating, we're integrating, but then we're releasing them and realizing that surrender to the divine, that I don't have to control it. I don't have to even understand it. I just have to let it be. And if it does not serve me, then you move on. It's not you running, you're not escaping, you're loving it for its place and moment in your life, and then releasing it and being true to yourself. Right. And standing in your power. That is the difference between escapism and being true to yourself and standing in your authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. It is difficult, but he knows it too. He knows that he's not allowing me to be me either. So we had this big discussion. I said, I think it's about just letting each other just be, and letting me be authentic and you be authentic, and then learning how to just be okay with that, because that's what being healthy is, I think, to be 100% authentic and allowing the other person to be authentic and be like, it's okay that we're different,
Yeah, as long as it's not affecting the other person by you existing, that if it starts affecting, then that's when you need to think about separating. But if you guys are happy and comfortable and you can coexist that way, great. If you can't, then that's some things you need to focus on.
Thank you. Thank you. Life is not easy, but it's
not meant to be.
I shouldn't say that. I should not say that. I erased that. Never mind.
It's a learning experience.
It's learning. I choose to make it difficult. If I make it if it's going to be not easy, it's because I'm choosing that route. So I have to accept responsibility for that. I erase that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I know
of marriages that go for 20, 30 years, completely different people, but somehow there's harmonious in how they interact and do, completely different into different things. So it can work. I've seen it.
That's unity consciousness in a nutshell. That's the definition, is knowing and loving and appreciating all of the differences, but still finding common ground and a place to connect. So
yeah. It is not easy, Jessica's right. These are big lessons, and how do we navigate this? Okay. Did you? Oh, I see Jessica. That's still left her hand up. Okay. Charmaine popped in there. Cool. Well, shall we get? Do we have time to do a little light language for the crowd here? Since we're we're all. I think most of us, everybody on the call now knows about the energies, and I don't have to explain anything, do I? Anybody? I think everybody gets it. Okay.
Bring it. Love
Yeah,
it.
bring it. Here we go.
Okay.
And do you explain while you're doing it what's coming through sometimes? I know.
Yeah, I do. Sometimes I'm gonna see what's out there, what wants to come through in this time. So I'll just take a moment to kind of parcel through what I'm gonna receive and see who wants to come through.
Okay.
And then I'll kind of see what I'm feeling that we need to focus on or what we need to bring about. Okay, I'm just getting a little bit of standing in your sovereignty. So realizing that you're not a victim and that you are in control of your reality and your circumstances, and that there are always avenues that you can take to remove yourself from that circumstance. But just realizing, really just empowering yourself to stand in your sovereignty. Unakaisma atumata sa anikaisma akasa unai katuma inuakasuna atasama atima tufu ulakasa anatasa umatina atuma kata anu kusana atasana atamatima tusa inaka inakumaitima atasa inuata nunyanaika tisa anumatasa ina umana ina kusama atisma ana akasa ina tusa ina tasa amata una kasa ina matasa atasa una kata mata lumana kimata ina mana iswana matasa ina mina lumana kasa. Love and acceptance of who you are enables you to stand in your authenticity. If you allow others to dictate who you are not standing in your authenticity. Be true to yourself, but do not impose upon free will. Una kisama atisma atumatasa, ina kasa, ina atisma tasa, ino kasma inala, ina minana. Love yourself, love for others. Una kumatisa ula kana, ina tusamata. Ina tima kusa ana akasamata, ino batisa atimata. And just standing in your sovereignty and realizing that you are sovereign, but so is everyone else, and it's okay to be different. We are all fractals and all expressions of source. Loving and just bringing everything through heart center, all your decision making, all of your choices. Base it in the heart, base it from love, and all will be well. Close out this transmission. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a
Powerful. That's the most powerful lesson I think we all need right now. It's just to speak our truths, to be in our sovereignty, and not have judgment or push our agendas onto other people. Let them be their own on their own timeline and evolutionary path. Laura, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to chime in for a second? Okay.
Just wanted to say that my uber hyper little one here just stopped and tuned in when Nina was doing the light language. It was really interesting. She stopped bouncing around.
And now she's back. Yeah. Is that your little one, Laura?
Granddaughter, right?
Granddaughter. All right.
I'm raising my granddaughter since his birth.
Nice.
So cute. Yeah,
Awesome.
children just really intuitively know. Intuitively feel that love energy.
So Mina, before we close out, I just a lot of people are asking about can you walk us through sort of a galactic chart in what you do? We kind of touched on it bits, but I realized we didn't go into it. So if people have interest to do that.
So absolutely. I suggest that you go to my website. I think we can put it in the chat. It's
I'll put it in the comments.
And you just click on the store tab and then click on book a reading. I offer more than just the galactic reading, but I encourage, if you haven't gotten that, start there. And the reason being is because what we're doing is we're establishing where you've been in this universe, what lives you've had, what your karmic connections are, if you have karmic debt, how it relates to this life, and all of your gifts. And that is power. It also acts as an activation. So when you integrate your higher self, your super consciousness and your subconsciousness into your consciousness, and you get in that divine alignment, then you start really accessing all of those memories, accessing those gifts, really empowering yourself with that knowledge, because then your higher self's like, finally, you know what I know. And now we can kind of like get the show on the road, you know? And so I need your time of birth, your place of birth, and your birth date. If you do not have your time of birth, I can, for an extra fee, go into the record of all records. It does take some extra time. I sometimes have to, you know, kind of, I won't say go above guides, but sometimes I do have to. So it does expend a little bit of energy for me to do that. But I do offer that as well. Just let me know ahead of time. And if you're international, we can talk on Instagram. You can choose 2 different types. I do offer a recorded session on Zoom where you actually get a recording of our session. And so you can refer back to it. You do receive, everybody receives a PDF printout, or a PDF you can print out. And then the other version is the phone call. And so you can just take notes if you want to do that. Just fill whatever is in alignment with yourself. But once you do that, then I encourage you to join my Zoom classes. I offer a Zoom class every other Saturday for people that have done the chart and want to really get into the nuts and bolts of how to access your guides, how to access those gifts, how to use them. We really dive deeper into that. And so that's offered as well. Then I do one-on-one sessions. So yeah, and then I do offer master classes, but those are invite only. And those are once I've worked with you enough and I feel that you're ready to move on and progress, we do that as well.
Awesome. You have a plethora
of knowledge in the different star systems. I like Lisa Royale's sort of terminology. It's galactic anthropology. So you have your vocabulary and knowledge within that galactic realm is quite expansive, especially for me. I've interacted with a lot of different channelers. So thank you for doing this work and helping us understand these terms and in our galactic families, you know, understanding those realities, those archetypes. It's super cool to interact in that way.
Oh yeah, and that's why I didn't pass through the Stargate portal of forgetting, because if I had, I wouldn't be able to have all this knowledge. So
thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you all for having me.
We'll close this one down for now.